Hi everybody, and thanks for having me here today. I run an organisation called TalkLife, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do today and some of our thoughts on the mental health sector that we work in. So I wanted to start by just spending a couple of moments thinking about where do young people go for support when they're really struggling, when they're having a tough time. Here's some of the options that currently exist at the moment. Obviously, if someone's struggling, they can go to professional healthcare, they can access the NHS, they can go to their local GP. However, for a young person, this can be pretty scary to go to a doctor and talk about what's going on for you. And often there's long waiting times. If you want to go and have some counselling, you could easily be waiting months before you get to speak to somebody. So then there's also charities, and charities do some absolutely incredible work. There's some amazing charities across the world. However, again, a lot of charities focus on ways of offering support that don't necessarily appeal or fit with young people and how they want to talk to somebody. So there's a real focus on helplines or meeting people in person, when actually it's probably quite unlikely that a young person these days is going to pick up the phone and make a phone call. In fact, they've probably never done that anywhere. There's also private counselling and psychotherapy, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I'm a counsellor myself, but I know that it can be very expensive. If you're under 18, it's difficult to get access to as well. And then there's friends and family and people you trust. And again, another brilliant resource for you to turn to when you're struggling. But talking to the people closest to you about those really difficult things that you might be feeling is really, really tough. We sometimes feel like we're burdening our friends or family, that they might not be able to cope with what we're telling them, and to turn around to your family and say, I feel suicidal is a big deal, and it's something that we're not always comfortable doing. So more and more young people are turning to the internet for support. And the internet is a fantastic tool. It's got lots of ways that it can support young people, but at the same time, if young people end up in the wrong places, they can be very vulnerable. It can be really unsafe and often triggering or unmoderated. So what is TalkLife? TalkLife is an online peer support network for young people to talk about the ups and downs of life. It's a place that, the idea behind it is that you can come onto TalkLife. It works not too dissimilar to like a Twitter or a Facebook platform, and you can instantly see that you're not alone. There are other people going through similar things across the entire world and talking about it, and you're connected with them right away. So it's a free app. It's instantly accessible any time of the day or night, wherever you are in the world. You can, when you join TalkLife, choose to either be entirely anonymous. You don't have to share anything about yourself at all. But if you'd like to, you can set up a profile and share a bit about your story, a couple of photos if you like, and just give people a sense of who you are. The whole concept of TalkLife is based around the power of social connection. And we believe really passionately that technology is this incredible tool, but it works best when it's used to bring together actual real-life human beings, and that social connection and being linked with another real-life person is one of the most protective things you could do for somebody when they're struggling with suicidal ideation or depression or anxiety. And that's what we're aiming to do, is to use technology to foster social connection. We've created what we think is a safe and encouraging network, and the idea is that lots of young people, when they stumble into TalkLife, maybe they've searched for self-harm or something in the App Store, it's giving them a place where they can start that conversation, potentially for the first time ever. A lot of our users have never, ever spoken about how they're feeling before, and it's a soft entry point that allows them to begin having those tentative conversations. We wanted to create somewhere that brought together what we think are the best aspects of social media that young people love to use and expect from a social media app, along with a safe and supportive community that allows them to get support. So how did we get started, and how did TalkLife grow into the platform that it is today? Basically, we started TalkLife because we've been there ourselves. We had all experienced times in our lives where we really struggled through various different things, and in those times thought, where am I supposed to go to talk about this? I've spoken to my family and friends so much about this, I can't talk to them anymore. I don't know where to go to just have a chat with somebody about those really difficult feelings that I'm going through. And we were passionate about wanting to do something to change mental health and to decrease stigma and make it a normal thing for people to talk about. And that's where TalkLife began. We launched on a pretty crappy iOS version. It was not beautiful in any way. It's now slightly more beautiful, I think. And then we expanded onto Android. And the whole process has been completely organic. So we learned very early on that if we want young people to use this platform, if we want the right young people to use it, then we can't force it. We can't focus on trying to get more and more people through the door because we're not going to have the right kind of people in the community. And in order to grow a valuable and powerful community, we need to wait for it to grow organically, and it has. And one of the things that we've really focused on the whole way through is that we found that a lot of interventions and support options for young people focused very much on clinical standards and what we as professionals and practitioners thought were the right things for these people to use. And while there's lots of value in that, we wanted to flip it slightly on its head and say we want to create something that is wholly focused around the end user. I feel like sometimes we lose sight of them, even though we try not to, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we did had them right at the centre. And in fact, if we didn't keep them right at the centre, they'd leave. They wouldn't use the platform anymore. So we've developed this global peer support community. We currently operate in, probably over 125 countries now, predominantly in the US and the UK, and then Australia and Canada. But I think we're also the #1 mental health app in Botswana at the moment, so we have some really nice geographical spread. We've got about 500,000 users and about 7.5 million pieces of content per month go up on the platform. So it's pretty well used. In terms of age and gender split, most of our users fall between the ages of around 16 to 24. And interestingly, we have almost a 50-50 split between male and female. TalkLife at the moment is very much a solution for young people, but we have started to think about, well, who else could benefit from a peer support model like TalkLife? And the thing that popped up for us was, well, veterans. This could be really powerful for them as well. So we're currently working with Harvard University on could we develop a replica of TalkLife that was more suited to the veteran market and start providing support there too. So TalkLife is based around the idea of peer support, and there's a whole heap of research that demonstrates the benefits of peer support for people struggling with mental health. So it can really increase someone's ability to cope, it can give them a much greater sense of well-being and resilience, and high levels of self-esteem and confidence. And that's really what we're all about. We're about showing people that they're not alone, and we're about removing the isolation that they feel. I think young people especially are going through things and have a tendency to feel like they're the only people in the world that are going through it, and it becomes so secretive and it's so hidden, and then they become increasingly isolated because they're not sharing. So we wanted to create a place where the isolation was removed and they could see instantly, oh, there's other people going through similar things. Maybe it's not exactly what I'm going through, but they're struggling too. We're definitely not about curing mental illness. That's not what we're set up to do. We're not a clinical intervention. We don't sit within the NHS or anything like that. We are purely a place to talk, and we really believe that by bringing human beings together, even without any specific training, even without kind of having lots of understanding experience of suicide and mental health, just by being the person that you are and being open to listening to somebody else, you can make an incredible difference. And even though we have trained peer supporters on our platform, we feel like anybody is able to help, and we have incredible examples of people reaching out and supporting each other that backs that up. So this is a little bit of a snapshot of how some of TalkLife looks. This here on the left is the feed, so you can see that we've got different people posting here. as you'd expect on a social network, they can comment on each other, they can put their own posts up, they can comment on each other's posts, they can react. So we give them quick reactions because we know sometimes it's hard to know what to say, but you might want to send somebody a virtual hug or just say, I hear you, I support you, I feel the same. So we give them that option too. We also have themed, like old school chat rooms where people can come together and have more of a group discussion around predefined topics. Some of them are mental health specific, but a lot of them are kind of music, or I'm bored, I just want to have a chat, and that kind of thing. So on the right, there's just a couple of example posts that I've pulled off the platform. This first one is from a user who's called themselves depressed and stressed. And they've said, how do you tell your parents that you're depressed? Any tips at all? I don't know what I would say. I love them so much. My mum's taking depression medicine and I'm worried that they'll make me do that or see a therapist. Has anyone else done this? And you can see below people have started to reply to that and comment. They're a little bit difficult to read, but this person here has said, just be open with your parents, sit down at the table with them and let them know how you feel. There's nothing wrong in seeing a therapist. They can be quite helpful at times. If your depression is really bad, then they may want you to get some medication to help you out. And someone's written something similar below, tell them that you want to talk about something serious, make sure nothing's distracting them. And then we've got somebody else, Mischief username, again saying these thoughts are so bad and I'm actually scared. And then we've got other people giving them some support and guidance. So obviously safety is a huge part of what we focus on at TalkLife. We have extensive safeguarding on the platform, and it's a combination of human moderation and safeguarding and AI-led moderation and safeguarding. At the very top of our safeguarding tree, if you like, we have a team of 24/7 professional safety administrators who are always online. They're able to moderate, get people off the platform, get content off the platform, generally in under 45 seconds, so we're very quick to move on things. We also have stage suspensions for people, so if somebody who shouldn't be using the platform does manage to get onto the platform, we have something called a troll watch, and we are able to permanently ban them across all their devices instantly. But we also have slightly less severe suspensions as well, so if some of our longer term users are having a bad day, perhaps they get into a bit of an argument with somebody, they need a bit of a cool off, then we will give them a 2-hour cool down break where they're able to look at everything still on TalkLife, they're just not able to post or comment for a couple of hours. One of the things that we feel like is really important is giving young people the tools for them to keep themselves safe online. And we think that educating them about how the online environment can be dangerous and what they can do to look out for themselves is really important. We have these things called trigger warnings. So when you come onto TalkLife, you can set your own trigger warnings. So I could come on and say, I don't want to see anything to do with eating disorders when I'm using this app. And that means we will do our best to cover anything to do with eating disorders with a little slide across, so you can choose whether you read it or not. The other option we give people is to set their own trigger warnings on something they post. So if I'm writing a post and I think, oh, that could be triggering for someone else to read, I have the option to put a trigger warning on myself. We also give people the option to block other users, to hide their content, to flag things. And we have quite a cool tool called word swapping, where certain words are not allowed on TalkLife. Whether they're swear words, we allow some swearing, but not too extreme, or trigger words. So for example, pills, we don't let people talk about pills on TalkLife. So if you're trying to type a post and you write the word pills, it automatically switches to pandas. If you are trying to call someone quite a severe swear word, that I won't say now, it automatically changes to koalas. So we think by doing that kind of thing, it takes some of the heat out of the moment and gives someone that second chance to think, yeah, maybe I don't want to write that after all. And we also have community guidelines. So we're very clear in our community guidelines what's okay to write in the community and what isn't okay. The types of things that aren't okay, we want people to talk about things like suicide and self-harm if that's helpful for them. We think that We don't want to stop people having those conversations because we push them underground and we increase the stigma and we make it a really taboo thing. We want to bring these conversations out in the open. But at the same time, we don't want people talking about methods, we don't want people using graphic detail, and we don't want people encouraging each other or asking for fasting buddies or anything like that. So any content that falls into that bucket will be taken down by one of our moderation team. The other thing that we moderate against is, again, young people have lots of emotions, and it's quite common for people to express them, to get angry, and that's okay as well. We don't want people to feel like they have to bottle anything, and we want them to be able to express it. But if that anger becomes directed at somebody on the platform or is specific towards somebody else, then that's something we take down as well. All of our safety work is governed by our incredible clinical advisory board. We're really lucky to work with some of the best minds in mental health across the world, and everything that we do goes past them, and they give us a really great clinical steer on everything that happens on the platform. So one of the other really cool things that we work on at TalkLife is our volunteering program. We've got thousands of young people involved in volunteering for TalkLife. And there's three ways that they can get involved. So the first role that we offer is what's called a TalkLife buddy. And a TalkLife buddy is essentially an online peer supporter. So these young people go through our training program and learn how to actively listen, how to convey empathy, how to support someone who's struggling, but also how to know your own limits, how to practice self-care, and how to signpost somebody onto other services when you're not the right person to be having that conversation. So those are our buddies. We also have a group of TalkLife moderators who are our kind of online safety guards, if you like. They support our admin team, and they're able to take down inappropriate content in line with the guidelines and quarantine it for review by one of our admin team. And then our beta testers are a really cool group. We only introduced them quite recently, but we realised that our community was full of techies, and these people had some amazing skills that we could really benefit from, and they were constantly saying to us, we found this bug on the platform, or we found this, you really need to improve this, or why don't you do this? So we thought, okay, why don't we get these guys on board and get them involved in some bug development? So they have the beta versions running on TalkLife, and they tear it to shreds for us on a regular basis and tell us all the things that we're doing wrong. Anyone who goes into our volunteering program has to go through all of those different stages. So recruitment, training, assessment, management and support. And it doesn't stop once they're trained, it's ongoing. Everybody who wants to be a volunteer is required to do a video Skype call and to have a security check on the platform. All of our training has been made online. It's generally pretty automated, and we've designed it with young people in mind. It's in short 15-minute chunks with lots of interaction, lots of quizzes, lots of assessments, and lots of kind of fun parts too. We also give all of our volunteers an option to take a break whenever they need it. In the platform they have little badges on their profiles that identifies them as a buddy or a moderator. Anytime they feel like they need a break, they can post without their status, or they can come to us and we'll deactivate them for a minimum of a 2-week period, and then we have a conversation with them when they feel ready to come back. I think what's nice about TalkLife is that people do tend to come on this journey. We see people come onto the platform often struggling. They get support, and then over time they become supporters themselves, and they generally become volunteers. And it's nice that even when they don't necessarily need the platform themselves anymore, they're able to give back and feel like they're adding value as well. A couple of years ago, we started thinking, we have, without really realising it, created an enormous database of data on youth mental health. And what could we do with this data to feed back in and to help the people that were using our platform? So we approached MIT, Harvard and Microsoft Research about joining together and seeing what we could do with them. And since then have been working on developing some machine learning classifiers. The idea of these machine learning classifiers is to use our data to be able to predict when someone is heading towards crisis, or when someone is at risk of self-harming, And over the last couple of years, we've just finished this basically. We have developed 42 machine learning classifiers. Here. So on our platform now, we are able to identify when someone is at risk of suicide to a 96% accuracy. We can also identify when someone is in a state of self-harm, and we break those down into subcategories. So if you look at the self-harm one, we identify when someone has just standalone self-harm, non-suicidal ideation, suicidal ideation, relapse planning, thoughts and behaviours. Now the idea, now that we've finished this, it's kind of on to the next phase, and now that we know this, it's, well, what do we do when we identify somebody who is in one of those places? How can we best support them? Now, one of the obvious things that we already do is signpost people to crisis support. So if anybody writes anything on TalkLife that suggests that they might be feeling suicidal, before they even get to post, their user experience is interrupted and we give them other options for support. However, we also recognise that sometimes they don't just want to be signposted away. They want to stay in the place that they're used to and talk to the people that they know and get support in the way that they've chosen. So we want to give those options, but we also want to make sure that we're providing support as far as we can to them on the platform. So we're currently working with Harvard on a project called Project Velar, which is developing N-of-1 interventions along with the clinical team to see what we could do on platform to really support people in those moments when they need that extra boost. We're in the very early stages at the moment and talking through what those interventions might look like. But some of the things that we've been talking about are, well, how could we really bolster those aspects of peer support that we know are so protective to somebody when they're struggling? And could we bring people together who could help each other? Or can we, if someone is really struggling to ask for help, is there something we can do to model help seeking and asking for help and help them to get their own needs met? So that's where we're moving on with that research at the moment. And kind of it leads nicely on from that, that impact and efficacy is a real focus of what we do. We're working with Harvard alongside those interventions to measure the impact that any of those have on an individual user. So within TalkLife we have an inbuilt survey system. That means we can measure someone and survey them on a daily, weekly basis and track how their suicidal ideation, self-harm and well-being is changing over time and what impact any interventions we do has. In addition to that, we're also really interested just to keep measuring the more generic well-being of our users and to find out what impact TalkLife is having on our community. We run quite regular impact surveys. We put them out for a couple of hours on the platform, get a couple of hundred results, and then kind of rinse and repeat every couple of months. This is the latest one we did about 6 weeks ago. And I think what's really interesting, I'll just pull out a couple of the stats here, is 77% of our users say that they now find it easier to ask for help when they need it. And I think for us that's a really important point because we want people to feel more able to ask for help. Whether that's asking for help on TalkLife or whether that's practicing the conversation somewhere safe and anonymous that then allows them to go home and have that conversation with their parents or speak to their school counsellor or reach out to a GP or a helpline. The other thing that I think is interesting is 52% said that their self-harm had decreased since using TalkLife. So it's really interesting for us to see what it is about what we're doing that is decreasing self-harm and how can we build on this. And the other one that I think is really interesting is that 39% of our users tell us that they don't go anywhere else for support apart from TalkLife. And we're capturing a group of people that are not getting captured at the moment by any other services. And I think that's because of the way we're providing support. And I think it's because for many young people, they might not be suffering severe mental illness. They're just going through a really difficult time and they need some support. And the places are limited for them to get that at the moment. I've just chosen one user to just go a little bit more in depth on. This is one of our users called Gallic Gunn. She's been on the platform since 2015. She's 20, and she's been having difficult feelings and thoughts since about the age of 8. She had quite a difficult upbringing. She was brought up by her grandparents. Her parents both had problems with alcohol, and she's had depression and suicidal thoughts for most of her childhood, really. She talks about how for her TalkLife is a place to come and vent, to come and talk about those difficult feelings that she's been bottling in. And you can see here the different ways that Gallic Gunn uses TalkLife. So this first post here is her when she's struggling a bit. She's feeling pretty low. She's saying depression is hitting hard tonight. I need some really positive vibes. And we've got people commenting and giving her support underneath. The second post is a bit more positive. This is her asking a question of the community, what is beautiful to you, and sharing what her vision of beauty is. And she's got lots of people below talking about beauty for me can't be defined, it's what strikes you. When you look at, hear or feel or understand something beautiful, you just know it. And then this third one is Gallic Gunn being more of a support to other people and starting a really positive conversation with other people in the community and asking them to think about what they love about themselves. And I always think that these conversations on TalkLife are really nice ones to start off, because it can at times get quite negative and people can be feeling really low, and then you cut in with a question like, okay, you're feeling really shit today, but tell me something you love about yourself, or tell me something beautiful that you have seen in the world today, or what happened today that made you smile even just a little bit. And that really boosts the mood of the community. So for us, it's all about upstream support. We want to catch young people as early as possible and make it so that talking about your mental health and your well-being is a normal part of day-to-day life. I think on social media, we often are, we tend to share the nice bits of our life that we're very proud of and we want everybody to see, and we don't share the more difficult parts. And actually sometimes when we do, and they get a little bit ignored, or they don't quite get the same reaction that our positive happy holiday photos did, then it's really difficult. And I think especially for young people who've grown up in a world that is dominated by social media, that never switches off, that's there all day, all night, there's no break from it, being able to be a bit more authentic online and share everything can be a really powerful thing. And we want to work towards breaking down stigma, not in a big overarching way, but actually one person at a time, encouraging that one individual person to come on and say, yeah, this is how I'm really feeling today and it's not that great. For us as well, it's providing support that really makes sense to the people who are using it, that's relevant to them, that is providing support in a way that just feels very natural and intuitive. It's easy for young people to download an app. They're on their phones all day, every day. Their phone's an extension of their arm. So to start talking about your mental health in that way is probably a little bit easier for them. So I'm just going to talk briefly about a campaign that we ran in May. It was a grassroots campaign called How Are You Really? Grassroots campaigns are very powerful, but they're also very necessary when you don't have any marketing budget. So we decided that for us, this was the right way to go, and that we would see what we could do with zero budget. The focus that we wanted was to get real life people to talk about how they were really feeling, with the idea that if you see someone like you talking about the struggles that they're going through, you're more likely to feel that it's okay for you. And we wanted to do a mix. We wanted to get some kind of celebrity involved, because we thought that has great power, but we also just wanted to get normal people involved. Just, you could see somebody who's like going to the same school as you, or doing something that you do normally, talking about their mental health, and hey, that feels okay. So we wanted to also stay relevant, so we thought a lot about, right, who is it that we can approach that might be willing to do something for us? And in enters PewDiePie. Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of PewDiePie, maybe? He's the leading world YouTuber, I'd say. He's got about 56 million subscribers to his channel. He's an interesting chap. He's been a bit controversial recently. He's got himself into a little bit of trouble But he's also a young Swedish guy who spends most of his time in his videos filming himself playing video games. And people love it. There's something really appealing about watching somebody else playing a video game. PewDiePie. And I have to say, having not really been a fan of PewDiePie before, watching his videos I can kind of see why people like him. It is very therapeutic to sit there and just watch someone doing something very normal, such as watching a video game. So we spoke to PewDiePie and said, could you put out a message about mental health? He made a few comments on his videos recently that made us think, maybe this guy is a bit ready to talk about his mental health experiences. And we could certainly see in the comments on his videos that the young people that were tuning in to watch him every day were also going through things themselves. So the result was this video. It's only 2 minutes, so I'm going to play it to you now if I can make it work. Right.
Hey, a bit different video today. It's Mental Health Awareness Week. If you weren't aware before, you are now. When I was younger, I personally went through some tougher times, and I strongly think that having someone to talk to is extremely important, and to share these emotions with, whether it's a friend, a parent, someone you love. Don't let it bottle up inside. Just telling someone how you really feel can sometimes be life-changing, and it's extremely important. And you may not have mental health issues yourself, but you can always be there as a helping hand for someone else. And I think this week is especially a great time to keep that in mind. Suicide is still the leading cause of death for males between the age of 20 and 50. Even though females are more likely to get depressed, they are generally better at seeking help to others when they do. There's a bit of a stigma for guys to talk about, feelings and all these things. It's not cool enough. I mean, it's a stigma for everyone in general, but especially males. And if you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to, there's this app called TalkLife, where you can share whatever emotions or thoughts that you have, and there will be someone there to listen to you. It's important to not let feelings get bottled up and try and cope with it your own. But at the same time, some things are just really hard to talk about. That you feel like you can't share it with everyone. So I think TalkLife is a really great solution to that. If you are going through a crisis, I'll link to where you can find help as well, wherever you are in the world. And I think that's extremely important. I want you to know that it's okay. It's common to feel this way, and everyone goes through different emotions throughout their life, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like I said, I struggle with thoughts myself, and especially being younger, and for what it's worth, I think pulling through, you'll be stronger for doing it. And no matter who you are, life is worth living, and better days will come. I promise. That's it for me today. Definitely check out the links I left in the description. It's a really great chance to be a helping hand this week as well. It could really change someone's life. That's it for me for now. Brofist. Hey!
joking. He put that video out on a Wednesday evening. We had a couple of hours notice that it was happening. And I think we had about 80,000 people come to the app, and we managed to stay up for 5 minutes. We were really proud of that. We were like, oh no! So yeah, it was a bit of a frantic couple of hours after that to try and get up and running again. But yeah, it was amazing for us to have him do that video. And we weren't even sure whether he'd mentioned TalkLife at all, so that was nice. But actually what was really incredible was what happened after that. And over the coming days and weeks after PewDiePie put his video up, hundreds of other people on TalkLife, on YouTube started copying him and putting up their own videos. Some of these YouTubers have thousands of followers, some of them have a couple. But what was incredible was to see that he had inspired all of these other people to come up and talk about their own experiences and share their own battles with mental health. And just by doing that, to see the spread of suddenly more and more people starting to think it was okay to share about mental health was amazing. And this is just a few of the videos that popped up in the days after his video. So I've been quite positive up until now, and I just want to maybe come on to some of the slightly more challenging things, because it isn't all positive, unfortunately. TalkLife has managed to reach hundreds of thousands of young people and hopefully create a really positive impact. But the reality of it is that we run on absolute fumes. It's nothing. And it's a really, really tough funding environment, and it's a really tough job for us just to keep sustaining and just to keep on keeping on, basically. I think mental health is probably one of the toughest funding environments. And for organisations like TalkLife, who are a bit different, sometimes we fall down the gaps in between what already exists. So we're not really a social network in terms of what people would expect a social network to be. We're not really a clinical service, and we're not affiliated with the NHS, and we haven't come out of a university necessarily. So we sit in this funny place, and I think that makes it even more challenging for us. Social networks do get a lot of negative press as well, and unfortunately often we get lumped into that negative press. And the frustrating thing about that is most of the time the people writing about these social networks have never actually looked at your social network. So they don't know how hard we're working on the safeguarding front. They don't know that we're working alongside researchers. They don't know about the impact work we do. And I think that without more support for organisations like TalkLife and the many other incredible, innovative organisations that are springing up, we're going to lose them. And this is the next generation, I think, of providing support. And that's not to say there isn't a place for all the other types of support that are completely vital. But if we don't find ways to help organisations flourish, then we're just going to stick with what we know, and we're not going to be able to move forward. And I think if we do that, we're going to be leaving behind a generation of young people that are going to keep coming through that aren't getting the support that they really need. So I'm completely overgeneralising here, but there are a few things that I think as a sector we are guilty of. And I think I've seen so much recently in the media across the world about how we are encouraging people to start talking more about their mental health, and how we need to break down stigma and have the conversation, and it's okay to talk. And that's a really, really important message. But it loses some of its power if there aren't enough places for people to have those conversations. And yes, at one point, the way we're heading, we want to be in a place where you don't need a specific mental health space to be able to talk about mental health. That's the place we want to end up at. But where we are at the moment, it's really difficult to talk about your mental health in normal day-to-day life sometimes. We also are very good at ticking our own boxes for safety and for risk and for impact. And I think all too often we are at risk of designing services that we feel meet the criteria and that we feel work and they're the right services. But by doing that, we're losing the people that we're actually designing them for. And there's no point having a fantastic service if nobody's going to use it, so we have to find a way of muddling the two together. The other thing I think that we're not very good at in the mental health sector, and maybe it's other sectors as well, is supporting each other and working together as organisations. I think that we could all learn a lot more from each other if we were open to being slightly less competitive, if we would break down our boundaries a little bit and not ring fence our own little area so much. We talk to a lot of really large charities, and we could do loads for them in terms of technology. We're nimble, we're innovative, and we have incredible developers working for us. And they similarly have amazing marketing teams and fundraising teams and operations teams. And if we could pull those two together and work together a little bit, I think that we could do amazing things for the people who we're trying to help. But I don't think we're quite there at the moment. We also sit at least a decade behind in terms of technology, at least. And we are sometimes a bit too satisfied to just be there. And I think that's got to change. I think we have to propel ourselves into the future and work really hard to catch up with other sectors. Otherwise, we're just going to lose people. And again, we stick with what we know. And as I was talking about how TalkLife falls down the middle, it's something different. It's something that people haven't necessarily come across. It's a little bit new, and there's lots of other examples of people doing similar things. If we stick with funding who we know and what we know, then we're not going to create any innovation. So I think we should flip these over. I think that we should really focus on giving people places to have those difficult conversations. I think we should put people at the centre of everything that we do, and let's be a bit more open to change, a bit more open to risks, and a bit more open to making mistakes. Now I know that in mental health, that isn't an easy thing to do, and I've spent many years working in suicide prevention, and we always used to say, when we release a product, it can't not be right because we're working with suicidal people. And I don't know if that's completely true. I think there is some room there to iterate and to try things, and I think if you're open and transparent with people about what you're trying to do, you can bring them on board and involve them. There is room for making mistakes. Let's catch up and make the most of what technology can offer. And let's make sure that young, innovative, passionate organisations and people are given a fighting chance to succeed in what they're doing. But most importantly, let's really change mental health and how each of us experience it, feel it, and support each other through it. So that's me. Thank you so much for having me here today. And a big thanks to Becky. She's done an amazing job to pull this together, and it's really great to be able to come here and share with you all today.